Welcome back. Chapter 2. Virgil Flowers walked out of the cafe in Blue Earth, Minnesota, slightly bilious after a dinner of brown slices of beef and brown gravy over brown potatoes and dead green beans, coconut cream pie on the side with a pointless Diet Coke. He had to quit all of that, he knew it, but hadn't yet done it. He burped, and the burp tasted brown. He'd taken 3 steps out the door before he noticed a motley group of 20 people standing in the parking lot, staring up at the sky to the south. When he turned to look, he saw the UFO. There was no question about it, really. The alien craft was obviously far away, but still appeared to be more than half the size of a full moon. It was motionless, hovering over the countryside like a polished dime, brilliantly lit, alternating gold and white lights, almost as bright as the setting sun, and hard to look at without squinting. A man dressed like a farmer in mud-spattered jeans and muddier gum boots said wisely, "It only appears to be motionless. It's probably a jumbo jet headed into the Twin Cities, flying low and right towards us. The sun's hitting it at just the right angle and we're getting a reflection." A pale woman with orange blonde dreadlocks and the voice of a high school teacher said, "No, it's not a jet. It's not moving. Line it up with that phone pole and you see it's not moving." Virgil and the farmer edged sideways to line the UFO up with the telephone pole, and the woman was right. The UFO wasn't moving. The farmer exhaled heavily and said, "Okay, I got nothing." More people were coming out of the cafe, attracted by the crowd in the parking lot. A man in a plaid sport jacket said, "This could be the start of something big." "Like an invasion?" the dreadlock lady said. She mimicked her shudder. "Like in Cloverfield? You don't know exactly what it is, but it's coming and it's bad." "Wouldn't they invade Washington or some place like that?" a thin man asked. "Why would they invade Iowa?" A Jocko-looking guy said, "Not because they're recruiting for a pro football team." And he had a Jocko friend who was wearing a red University of Minnesota jacket exchange high fives. Somebody said, "I left my camera at home. Wouldn't you know it? Probably see Bigfoot on the way back." A short, fat male carrier. "I saw a show where the aliens completely wasted LA, but it turned out everything was being controlled from one central bunker. And when the army hit that, all the alien tanks and shit quit working." "Independence Day," somebody said, "where they nuked the mothership and the fighters could get through the force field." "No, I saw that one too, but this was a different movie," the letter carrier said. "Ground troops in LA got the aliens with a bazooka or something." A young man with the black trimmed glasses and slick back hair said, with the voice of authority, "Battle of Los Angeles, 35% of tomato meter. The ground squad lit them up with a laser indicator so American fighters could target the aliens' home headquarters, Or maybe they'll call in the artillery. I don't precisely recall. A young woman in a jewel blue nylon leather jacket that matched her eyes said, "I hope they don't get us pregnant with those monster things like in Aliens. You know, that ate their way out of your womb when they hatched." "I don't think that was aliens," the authoritative young man said, "but just in case, maybe you ought to get a lot of good loving before they arrive." Jewel blue, the voice of scorn. Dream on, Point Dexter. Warning. No, I'm just joking. I'll explain later. Virgil scratched his chin, momentarily at a loss. He was a tall, thin, blue-eyed man with blonde hair curling well down over his ears. He was wearing a canvas sport coat over a Moon Taxi t-shirt and jeans with cowboy boots and a blue ball cap. As an official law enforcement officer of the state of Minnesota, he thought he should do something about an alien invasion but didn't know exactly what. Call it in, maybe? He watched the thing for another moment, the flickering light, then walked over to his truck and dug out a pair of Canon 10-power image stabilizing binoculars for a closer look. He saw a teardrop-shaped research balloon, several stories high, probably made of translucent polyethylene film. The low-angle sunlight was refracting through it. Most likely flown out of Iowa State University in Ames, he thought, which was more or less directly to the south. "What do you see?" asked the woman with the dreadlocks. "A weather balloon," Virgil said. "That's what they always call it, a weather balloon. The next thing you know, you got an alien probe up your ass," somebody said. Virgil passed the binoculars around and they all looked. And then they all went home disappointed. A UFO invasion would have been a hell of a lot more interesting than a spam and eggs for dinner. He took the binoculars back to his truck, noticed that he hadn't pulled the plug out of the boat and pulled it, and water started running down into the parking lot. On his way out of Blue Earth, Virgil saw more groups of people standing in the parking lot watching a UFO. If he wasn't careful, he could wind up investigating a balloon. John Duncan, a supervising agent at the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, called as Virgil crossed I-90 headed north on Highway 169. "We need you to investigate a murder." "Where at?" "University of Minnesota," Duncan said. "What happened?" Virgil asked. "And why me?" "A professor got murdered. Head bashed in," Duncan said. "Again?" "What?" "A professor got murdered there 2 weeks ago," Virgil said. "Is this another one?" No, same one," Duncan said. "Minnesota Homicide is working it, but they got nothing. Turns out the professor was the brother of this rich woman, Boopsy, Bunny, Biffy, something like that, last name Quill, who gave a lot of money to the governor's campaign. And you know what the governor thinks of you." "Ah, Jesus, I hate that guy," Virgil said. "Why doesn't he leave me alone?" "Because you're good at doing favors for people like him, and he's good at doing favors for rich people," Duncan said. "You brought it on yourself with that school board thing." With Virgil investigating, the state attorney general at the time had managed to send most of a school board to prison for murder. The attorney general, who actually done nothing but look good on TV, had taken full credit for the investigation and subsequent prosecution and was now the governor. He did have broad shoulders, a baritone voice, and extra white teeth. "You know, it'll piss off the Minnesota cops," Virgil said. "Does that bother you?" Virgil said, "Well, yeah, it does, as a matter of fact." "Huh? Too bad. Doesn't bother me at all, since I won't be there," Duncan said. "Anyway, I have a name for you. Margaret Train, a sergeant with Minnesota Homicide, known as Maggie. She's leading the investigation, coordinating with the campus cops." "Don't know her," Virgil said. "She's any good?" "Can't say," Duncan said. "I judge women by their looks and the size of their breasts, not whether they're competent detectives." After a moment of empty air, Duncan blurted, "For Christ's sakes, don't tell anybody I said that. I mean, I was joking, okay? Big joke, maybe a little insensitive." "I'm not recording you," Virgil said. "Yeah, but somebody might be. You never know," Duncan said. Virgil could imagine him looking over his shoulders. "We have the most amazing surveillance stuff now, right here at BCA. I've been messing with it all week. Anyway, get your ass up here tomorrow. The governor would like to see this solved by the end of the week." "It's already Thursday," Virgil said. "Better get moving then," Duncan said. Virgil didn't want to go to the Twin Cities to mess around in Minneapolis murder investigation. The cops there handled more murders in a year than the BCA did, and they were good at it. Virgil tried to tap dance. You know, I'm supposed to be working that thing in Fulda. There are some pretty influential religious groups. Duncan interrupted. Are you towing a boat? A boat? Virgil could see the Ranger angler. Virgil could see the Ranger angler riding high and still damp in the rearview mirror. Don't bullshit me, Virgie. That thing in Florida is weird, but it's basically chasing chickens. And you're towing your boat, which means you don't care about Fulda any more than I do. Get your ass to Minneapolis. I got your room at the Graduate by the U. It's your dream hotel. It's got a beer joint, a Starbucks, and a piece of the resistance of Applebee's. It does sound good, Virgil admitted. The kind of place I'd stay. Any questions? All kinds of them. But you won't have the answers, Virgil said. Talk to Train before I get up there so she'll know I'm coming and it's not my fault. I can do that, Duncan said. I'll blame it on the governor. Anything else I should know? There's a UFO hovering over Iowa, due south of Blue Earth, Virgil said. I wouldn't be surprised, Duncan said. So, I'll email the media coverage of this killing. You'll have it before you get home. I'll be home in about 5 minutes. No, you won't. You just cross I-90 heading north. We got a new toy and I'm tracking your cell phone. Have been ever since you pulled your goddamn boat off the goddamn Mississippi. The Fuda incident. A minister with the Universal Life Church, get ordained today, had married 6 people, 3 men and 3 women, to one another as a group. And they sent a nude photo off to the New York Times, which of course had published it on their vows page with the appropriate black rectangles covering the naughty bits, along with a narrative about the ceremony. We believe there should be no barriers whatsoever to personal sexual expression in whatever combination the voluntary participants feel to be genuinely authentic. Blah, blah, blah. If the group wedding had actually taken place, it violated Minnesota law. Various conservative ministerial associates had demanded action. Action required investigation to make sure that nobody is officialdom was getting his or her weenie pulled. Virgil was the designated hitter, but when he got the assignment, his eyes had rolled so far up into his head that he could see his scalp. He had not yet begun to investigate despite increasing pressure. When asked why by an attractive, if somewhat hefty, Rochester television reporter with whom he was sharing a bag of donuts in the Mankato Dunkin' Donuts, he'd unwisely replied, I had to wash my hair. He took the opportunity to negotiate with John Duncan. If I investigate up in Minneapolis, I won't have time for Fulda. I understand that. If you're out of pocket, I'll pass the word to our new Attorney General and get him to send one of his own dim-witted investigators out there. Man, you're developing the righteous, bureaucratic chops, Virgil said, impressed. I am, it's true, Duncan said. He once been a competent investigator. I'll call Train and tell her you'll be there by noon tomorrow. Virgil pulled into the farm an hour later, backed the boat into the barn next to the new used compact John Deere tractor they bought the previous autumn. They rigged it for plowing snow as well as general farm utility use, and a good thing too. The past winter had started off easy, but turned ugly in late January and stayed that way. By early March, they had a snowdrift in the side yard that reached up to the lowest wire of the clothesline. Then came April and thunder snow. Now, in early September, the snow was gone, barely, and the tractor was hooked up to an aging hay baler. The farm belonged to Virgil's pregnant girlfriend, Frankie, who is expecting twins sometime in the next couple of months. And ultrasound said they were getting one of each. Frankie, her blonde hair down in a pigtail, waddled across the barnyard to meet him. Catch anything good? Walleyes. Johnson's got to clean and freeze them. We'll have a fish fry the next time we go over. Good. Listen, Rolf is bailing tomorrow. It looks like it could rain Monday, so we got to get it in, she said, squinting into the UFO free sky. She was talking about hay, which was already cut and laying in windows in the alfalfa field. I think that's how it's pronounced. Alfalfa field. Rolf was the oldest of her 5 sons. "Oh, geez, honey," John Duncan called. Fist on her hips. "You're trying to slide out of it again." "Hey, come on, it's work. That professor who got killed up in Minneapolis, John wants me up there by noon tomorrow. He was tap dancing like crazy. If you leave here at 10 o'clock, you'll get there in plenty of time. And if you get up at 5, you could throw for 4 hours before you have to clean up." 5 o'clock? Mother of God, Frankie. "Well, I can't do it. Goodyear called and offered me $100 to paint their logo on my stomach. She was blimp-like. She started out short, slender, and busty, but now sometimes seemed to Virgil to be wider than she was tall." Oh, excuse me, sorry. "Oh, well, another couple of months, babe." She rubbed her stomach. "I don't know. I've been through this a few times, and I think it could be sooner." "Hope so. This is getting to be a load." Virgil rolled out the driveway the next morning at 10:15, having kissed both Frankie and his yellow dog, Hannes, goodbye. He took 2 days' worth of clothes, figuring he wouldn't be working on Sunday and would be back home. On the way out the door, Frankie called. "You want to know what was the last thing Hannes licked before he kissed you goodbye?" Well, no, he didn't, but he wiped his mouth on the back of his hands, thinking, probably his balls. I hope his balls. Ooh, excuse me. Sorry. Though the morning had been cool, Virgil's aching arms and neck were covered with thin red scratches from the bale of dry alfalfa he'd been throwing. It would have been much worse if it'd been hot and he had to work in a t-shirt. They still hadn't gotten in more than half the field, but Frankie's second and third oldest son, Tall Bear Moses, would be throwing that afternoon. Virgil liked all the aspects of living on a farm except for the farm work. His parents always had a garden, and the teenage Virgil was expected to put in time picking and pulling and shucking, not because they needed the food, but because it was good for him. Later, as a teenager, he tasseled corn in the summer to make money. He hated it all. He was a rocker, not a horticulturalist. Frankie kept an oversized vegetable garden: potatoes, tomatoes, sweet corn, squash, cucumbers, radish, carrots, green beans, like that. Out behind the barn in what had been, decades earlier, a pigsty, a variety of annual flowers and herb beds sprawled along the driveway and the front of the house, and all had to be prepped and planted, watered, and harvested. A month earlier, Virgil had yanked a stunted orange, dirt-smelling carrot out of the ground, had flicked an earthworm off of it, and said, "All of that fucking work for this? Are you kidding me?" Frankie laughed. She thought he was joking. He wasn't. And she had the cloth line in the side yard left over from the 17th century or something. She had a perfectly good clothes dryer, but she made Virgil tote the wet bed sheets and blankets out to the line in the summer because, she said, they smelled like sunshine when they were dry. Virgil had to admit she was right about that. But carrots? You could get a perfectly good bag of peeled carrots at a supermarket for, what, a couple of bucks? And that was more carrots than he'd eat in a month. He cut 169 at St. Peter's, headed north, rolled past the farm fields and suburbs, and then up the Interstate Highway I-35 West, towards the glass towers on downtown Minneapolis. Dave Alvin, Jimmy Dale Gilmore on the satellite radio singing Downey to Lubbock. If he could play guitar like Alvin or the harp like Gilmore, he'd now be famous in Texas, Virgil thought. Part of Texas anyway. Okay, maybe only in Cut and Shoot, but somewhere in Texas. He parked outside the Minneapolis City Hall in one of the spots reserved for cops, put a BCA car on a dashboard, signed, and went inside. The Minneapolis City Hall was not a pretty place inside or out, and was the most barren public building Virgil had ever been in. Narrow, empty hallways were punctured by closed doors that rarely seemed to open at all. Hard benches that resembled church pews were spotted along the hallways, but he'd never seen anyone sitting on one. Strange things were undoubtedly happening behind all those doors, but he couldn't imagine what they might be. Minneapolis homicide. If they say this word one more time. Minneapolis homicide was part of a broader department that included other violent crime units. Entry was through a tiny dark anteroom where a young woman sat behind a window through which she could check visitors. She looked at Virgil's ID, said, "Let me get somebody." The door to the interior popped open a minute later, and a balding cop with a smile and a coffee cup said, "Come on. I'm going to want to listen to this." Virgil said, "Oh, man." The office consisted of an L-shaped room, its two long, narrow wings wrapped around the corner of an exterior wall of the building. Working cubicles were backed up against the wall, each with two desks on opposite sides. Large windows let light into the space. The cubicles were not overly tidy. Sport coats and jackets were hung over partition walls, and paper was everywhere. The cop led Virgil down the hall past a half dozen cubicles, most empty, others with cops looking at computers. He stopped halfway down the left wing of the office, pointed at a cubicle two down from where they were standing, and half whispered, "She's in there," as if she were a dragon. Margaret Train was a sturdy 40-ish cop with 20 years on the force. She had short brown hair, brown eyes, and was dressed in blue nylon slacks with leg pockets, a white shirt, and a blue jacket. Virgil peeked into her cubicle where she was peering nearsightedly at a computer screen. She became aware of his presence, turned, frowned, checked his cowboy boots and t-shirt, and asked, "Yes?" "Okay. I'm Virgil Flowers. I know who you are, Flowers," she snapped, leaning back in her chair, not bothering to hide her anger. "What do you want from me?" "A little less hostility would help," Virgil said. "I don't want to be here any more than you want me here. If I can figure a way to get out of this job, I'll be gone." "You're pals with the governor." "No, I don't like the governor. He's a weasel," Virgil said. "I once did something that helped him get elected." "I know about the school board thing," Train said. Her voice was still cold, her eyes as frosty as her voice and skeptical. "What do you want?" Virgil shrugged. "Here I am. I thought if I could review what you already done. Everything we've done so far has been useless, so there's not much point," she said. Virgil took a breath. "Look, I can start all over by myself, get everybody confused about who's doing what, and you won't see me again. Be a big waste of my time, probably irritate the hell out of a lot of people, including you, but I can do it. Or I could look at your reports and start from there." She opened her mouth to reply, but before she got a word out, a man who walked up behind Virgil said, "Margaret, could I speak to you for a moment?" Train said, I know what you're doing, Margaret. Step in here." He pointed to an interview room across the hall. Right now. The man was tall, thin, balding, and black. He wore rumpled gray suit pants, a white shirt, and gold-rimmed glasses. He had an empty holster on one hip. He was a cop who could have done advertisements for an accounting firm. He nodded at Virgil as Train got up and brushed by him into the interview room. He said, "We'll be just a moment," and closed the door. The cop who pointed out Train had been eavesdropping from the next cubicle. He stepped out with a grin and said, "That's Lieutenant Knox. Nothing like getting off on the right foot, huh?" Train's now getting her ass handed to her by the lieutenant, which will make her even happier than she already is. Virgil said, "I can understand why she's pissed. I would be too in her shoes." "Yeah, but here you are, a cowboy with actual cowboy boots, likely with horse manure on the insteps, and wearing a band shirt. So you probably enjoy standing around on street corners bullshitting with people. Maggie, on the other hand, does not do bullshit at all." "What's wrong with my shirt?" Virgil was wearing a vintage Otis Taylor Trance Blues t-shirt available only on select internet sites. "It's not that often that you see a cop wearing one, unless maybe he's undercover," the cop said. "I'm trying to elevate fashion standards among law enforcement personnel," Virgil said. "So Train, she's smart?" "Yeah, she's smart. Smart as she is the Smart as she is, the Star Tribune says she's baffled. What pisses her off is she actually is baffled. She's got no clue of what happened over at the U. No suspects, no prints, no DNA, no murder weapon, no time of death even. She doesn't even know for sure why the dead guy was where he was or how he got there." The door to the interview room opened, and Train scooted out, almost as if she'd been kicked in the ass. She scowled at Virgil as Lieutenant Knox disappeared down the hall, pointed at an empty desk, and said, "That desk belongs to a guy on vacation. You can use it until he gets back. He'll be back in 2 weeks, but a highly qualified investigator like yourself probably won't need more than that. All the drawers are locked, but you can use the computer. I'll open my files for you. Let me know when you're done and I'll close them." Virgil said, "I appreciate it. While you're doing that, if you could point me to the men's room." "I'll show you," the other cop said. "I'll walk you across the street to the cafeteria. Give you the lay of the land." To Train, he said, "We'll be a few minutes. You should go lie down in the ladies' room and put a cool, damp hanky on your forehead." "Fuck you," Train said, but not in the mean voice she used on Virgil. She was already settling back in front of her computer. Virgil had been to the Minneapolis cop shop a few times, but the man, whose name was Ansel and who was a detective sergeant, gave him the full $2 tour. They wound up in the cafeteria in the government building across the street from City Hall. The two buildings were connected by an underground tunnel, the government center tall and now, after a few decades of being modern, a little shabby. The City Hall was old and squat and ugly, with dim, empty hallways with ranks of closed doors and stone floors that kicked echoes out from your feet when you walked across them. They ordered some kind of pie, which was yellow and might have been custard or possibly banana. And Newman briefed Virgil on the computer system and what he could expect in Train's file, as well as a review of what the media was doing. They'd been all over Train's ass. A Channel 3 crew ambushed her out at her house during dinner, and they spent some time yelling at each other. She's got a problem. Why take it out on me? I understand not wanting an outsider, but Newman, because it suggests she can't handle the case. I'm not doing that. No, But guess what happens when the governor's fair-haired boy shows up here and the case gets solved? Who gets the credit? Who's the village idiot? Train figures she's going to wind up sitting in the corner with a pointy hat on her head. Oh, shit. When Virgil and Newman got back to the homicide office, another cop had shown up and was eating a tuna salad sandwich at the desk on the other side of the cubicle wall from Train. Train was again nearsightedly peering at her computer screen. Virgil said, "Margaret?" "What?" He tipped his head toward the interview room. "Step in here for a minute. We need to talk." She launched herself from her chair, followed Virgil into the room, closed the door, and crossed her arms. "What?" Virgil held up his hand in a placid gesture. "I don't think you need my help. I'm not here voluntarily. I'd be pissed if I were in your shoes, and I told Ansel that. I understand, but we're stuck with it. If we figure this thing out, I'll disappear. Nobody from the media will ever hear my name. And if anybody asks me, I'll tell them you ran the show. Because, honest to God, I don't need this." She unfolded her arms. "It's just insulting, you know? I know how you feel about it. You know Lucas Davenport, right? You must have overlapped." Davenport had been a Minneapolis homicide cop before he on to the BCA and then to the U.S. Marshal Service. "Yeah, he's a friend," she said. "He's a friend of mine, too. We're almost best friends in an odd way," Virgil said. "Give him a call. See what he thinks." She agreed, if still a bit grudgingly. "Okay, let me open the files for you, and I will give Lucas a ring." And that's the end of chapter 2. I know y'all saw me struggling with this, right? If y'all didn't, I'm telling you, I'm struggling with it. So, how do I say it? If they keep giving useless information, this book is going to be a dud for me. I can't stand useless information. Okay, what I consider useless information, the UFO, for real though? You wasted the UFO. Okay. So, I know my aunt gonna tell me, girl. But that part, I don't like useless information. So I'm gonna hopefully it's done with useless information, or it don't occur often. So I'm gonna give it up to chapter 5 to get into some groove, or the book gonna be switched to another book. Okay, but that's all I gotta say. I'ma see y'all in chapter 3. Bye for now.